In June 2002, a match was made on the South Wales Police DNA database that would end a 29-year search for answers. Investigators of the Landersea team had finally unmasked the potential suspect as the Saturday Night Strangler, a local man who was suspected of committing the rapes and murders of 3 young women. The story of the Landersea killer would begin in July 1973, with the death of a young hitchhiker, Sandra Newton. This crime would go unsolved, along with 2 more murders in September 1973. In their hunt for this vicious killer, detectives interviewed scores of suspects, and with the help of a psychological profiler, they slowly whittled down their list of thousands of suspects to just several hundred. But ultimately, their efforts came to a dead end. With advances in DNA technology in the late 1990s, police were finally able to search for the killer by using his genetic fingerprint left at the crime scene, and the pursuit of justice resulted in one of the biggest police investigations in Welsh history. In May 2002, a group of people gathered at Port Talbot's Goyder Cemetery. But these were not mourners, they were an exhumation team, consisting of forensic archaeologists, forensic dentists, scientists, pathologists and policemen. A tent was erected over the grave of Joseph Kappen and the digging started. The weather turned, heavy rain poured down, thunder cracked and lightning split the sky. Although it was a ghoulish task, the group were hoping to extract dead man's DNA and match it to the Saturday Night Strangler, Wales' first documented serial killer. As twilight had finally fallen after a long day of digging, the team of detectives and forensic experts hunched around the large newly made hole in the ground as the dirt-covered coffin was slowly brought to the surface. As ominous flashes lit up the night sky, one man looked at the other and muttered, "Looks like he doesn't want to come up." In September 1973, 16-year-old Geraldine Hughes and her best mate Pauline Floyd meet at a nightclub in Swansea, South Wales. With songs by Mark Bolan playing to the crowd, the dance floor is packed. Located on the floor above, Roger Moore is playing James Bond in Live and Let Die to a large crowd of cinema-goers. Known as The Rank, this nightclub is the most popular spot for youngsters of the time, one of the swankiest discos in South Wales, that drew huge crowds from miles around. But that night, Saturday, September 15th, something was different. Among those having a good time at The Rank that evening, was one man who had other thoughts in his mind besides dancing and frolicking. But no one there would have known his intentions, or that he was a sexual predator. Hidden in plain sight, with his shoulder-length hair and sideburns, he was indistinguishable from all the other would-be male suitors. This was a time, long before the term serial killer was even known, and little was understood about the criminal mind. As the young man stood there, it is possible he had already picked out Geraldine, a bubbly teenaged girl wearing a white mini dress with a big laugh, and her friend, Pauline, a quiet girl of just 5'4", who liked to wear rings on her fingers and green nail varnish. On that fateful night, the 2 young girls faced an awkward journey home. They lived 7 miles away in the neighboring villages of Landersea and Skewen. There were no buses at 1:00 a.m. when the disco ended, and taxis were an expensive luxury. Few people had cars back then. Pauline and Geraldine both worked in a sewing factory and earned £16 a week. A taxi at the time was £4. In order to get where they needed to go, the young girls hitchhiked, something that many others did. Although the cinema billboard illuminates light into the wet Swansea night, it would soon be extinguished by government order. The country was in the grip of an energy crisis, with a war in the Middle East sending oil prices soaring, as well as miners on strike, resulting in coal reserves that were soon starting to deplete. All across Britain, street lights, advertising signs and cinema billboards are turned off in a desperate attempt to stave off power cuts. As the girls sheltered at a bus stop in the spitting rain, just a few hundred yards from the club in the direction of home, a passing motorist observed a white car swerve to the side of the road and picked the girls up. As Philip O'Connor sat at the next set of traffic lights, the white car draws alongside. He glances over and sees both girls in the front seat chatting away to the driver. He is able to catch a glimpse of the man, sporting bushy hair and a mustache, however most of his face is hidden behind the girls. The two friends never returned home, and that was the last time they are seen alive. The following morning, at around 10:00 a.m., a pensioner walking in a wooded copse near Landersea stumbles upon the body of Pauline Floyd. She is found lying face down, her black platform boots placed beside her. With a 5-foot length of rope lashed around her neck several times, it appeared she had been strangled. But her killer had also battered her about the head, her clothing heavily bloodstained. Some 50 yards away, Geraldine's body is discovered close to the main Jersey Marine Road, which leads directly to the M4. Like her best friend, she too had been hit over the head and strangled from behind with the length of rope. Although the girls, both virgins at the time prior to their deaths, were found fully clothed, post-mortem examinations revealed they have been raped. After the rapes, the killer had allowed each girl to redress herself. This was evident by the fact that their feet inside their tights were dirty from the earthy floor. The copse where the bodies were found was a shortcut from the main road to Landersea and Pauline's home, where both girls had planned to spend the night. What is unclear is how both girls ended up in the pitch-dark copse with a stranger, and how that stranger managed to control two young girls. The answer to this might never be known. The two girls had been taken to that forest, and they're brutalized, then murdered and dumped like discarded rubbish. At the end of their childhood, they suffered a brutal and violent end. A large police murder inquiry was launched, and a team of more than 150 detectives was swiftly assembled. It would prove to be the biggest murder investigation in Welsh history. The crime scene at Landersea lies in the center of the heavily populated South Wales industrial area, the landscape of which is dominated by steel plants, flaring oil refineries, and deep-water docks. The main towns of Swansea, Port Talbot and Neath are easily accessible and just minutes away along the M4. Police learned from passing motorists that a white car, soon to be identified as an Austin 1100, was seen parked at the entrance to the copse between 1:45 a.m. and 2:15 a.m. on that Sunday morning. It was likely this was the killer's car, but none of the eyewitnesses saw the number plate. The motor vehicle provided a potential link to another murder that occurred 3 months earlier. On July 15, 1973, 16-year-old hitchhiker Sandra Newton was found strangled, her body dumped close to a local disused colliery. Like the other victims, Sandra had been raped and strangled, with the killer seeing the hem of her chiffon skirt to choke the life out of her. She was last seen walking home from a nightclub in the neighboring village of Britton Ferry after a Saturday night out. Subsequent investigations learned that an Austin 1100 had been going like the clappers in the area around the time of the murder. The papers soon came up with a sensationalized nickname for the killer, calling him the Saturday Night Strangler. The police investigation, led by Chief Superintendent Ray Allen, set up a murder room in Skewen Police Station. With no computers to compile information, the team instead rely on a complex manual card index system, as well as a wall-sized whiteboard known as a graticule, which was divided into tiny squares in which individual inquiries or actions are listed and then crossed off when completed. In an effort to warn the public about the dangers of hitchhiking, police print up a poster that reads, "Danger, thumbing lifts has LED to murder, don't." Barbara Williams, a close friend of Pauline and Geraldine, recalls there were police, dogs, panda cars, going round all the time, everywhere. No one walked the streets. My mother would not let me out of her sight. It could have been the milkman, the postman. A flurry of tips, reports, accusations and false leads poured into the murder room. As a result, the inquiry was soon drowning in the very paperwork it had requested. The strongest lead came from the eyewitness motorists who provided the type of car seen at the crime scene, that of a white Austin 1100. The search for the owner of the suspicious car would prove to be both laborious and time-consuming. In 1973, cars are registered in local taxation offices, and although the team obtained a list of Austin 1100 owners, it involved trawling through the records in each office. This produced a list of more than 11,000 white Austin 1100s. Each owner is visited by members of the team, and they are only eliminated from the inquiry once they provide a statement of their whereabouts on the night in question, and only when this is alibi verified by a statement from someone else. As part of the investigation, police questioned workers who were in the process of completing the final stages of the M4 construction, as well as employees at the steel works in Port Talbot, which comprised some 13,000 men. One line of inquiry saw detectives scour the country after fairground workers, after it was learned that the murders coincided with the annual Neath Fair. Meanwhile, detectives were divided over the inclusion of a third case, one that bore striking similarities to the Landersea murders. The death of Sandra Newton occurred just several months earlier, and at the time, her married boyfriend confessed that they left the nightclub together and had a quickie in the back of an abandoned van. He told police he then left Sandra at the roadside and walked home in the opposite direction. It was the last time he saw Sandra. But the police found the admission of adultery an awkward fact, and in public it was denied that the victim had been sexually assaulted. The quickie the lovers shared was not disclosed. The boyfriend didn't have a license and never owned a car, while Sandra's body is found miles away. This would have meant he was cleared, but there was still a lingering suspicion that he was responsible. The most important piece of evidence the team had at the time was a cast made of a car that had been at the site of the murders. Eventually, the Skewen Murder Room compiles a collection of 35,000 index cards, each containing names in different subject categories, such as suspicious acts, rumors, psychics, pregnant women, queer person, and psychopath. This wealth of information helped create a list of 10,500 nominal suspects, 11,000 car questionnaires, 4,000 statements from Austin car owners, and 10,000 miscellaneous statements. But this many tips and eyewitness reports had to be checked, and every piece of paper is supposedly cross-indexed, a mammoth task that proved overwhelming for the investigating team. In an effort to appeal directly to the public, Chief Superintendent Allen holds a press conference and requests that the killer's relatives to turn him in. "We are pretty certain he is being shielded by someone. Could be a woman, could be a relative, or someone close to him." That Sunday morning, his shoes must have been muddy, his clothing could have been bloodstained. This man is sick and needs medical attention. He could kill again unless we can get him to a doctor. Let the police know about him before he kills again. We will look after him. But no one turns him in. By mid-1974, the murder investigation is quietly wound down and the inquiry has run out of credible leads. The Saturday Night Strangler had escaped justice. On the third anniversary of the murders, Geraldine Hughes's mother Jean organized a protest march comprising 50 of her sewing factory workmates to 10 Downing Street. And there the group stood, under the watchful gaze of the number 10 staff, with their handmade banners proclaiming, "Bring back hanging." Jean Hughes posed for the photographers holding her 9,000 signature petition, and said, "I can't accept what happened to Geraldine. It has left me very bitter," she said. "If they ever catch the person responsible, they should hang him. I want him to feel a rope around his neck like the girls felt." But her march on Downing Street is futile, and she does not achieve what she set out to do. Britain's government is preoccupied with troubles at home, such as industrial strife, economic meltdown, and rebellious unions. Besides, even if they did agree to bring back capital punishment, in this case there is no one to hang. Back in South Wales, the trail has gone cold. But the investigation, like any unsolved murder, was never officially closed. When the Landersea murder inquiry was wound down, all of the boxes of evidence and boxes of statements, along with much of the girls' clothing, was shipped to Sandfields Police Station in Port Talbot. It stayed for nearly 30 years. But due to the passage of time, some of the boxes of statements had got damp, ruining the information contained within. Thankfully, the most valuable forensic material, such as the girls' underwear, was retained in dry storerooms at the Home Office's Forensic Science Labs in Chepstow. In the intervening years, the case was reviewed with a new investigating team, who who trawled through the paperwork and questioned a new suspect, but this was more of a formality than a serious investigative venture. Even the DNA technology in the mid-80s had little influence, mainly because these early DNA tests required a fresh sample the size of a 10-pence piece, blood or semen, for a successful DNA profile. The stains on a Landersea victim's clothing from a decade earlier were of no use, and as each review closed without a conviction, the chances of catching the Saturday Night Strangler faded with every passing year. Thanks for watching part 1 of the Saturday Night Strangler. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll know when we post new videos. Click one of the videos below to continue watching.